Hi, I'm Liz with Liz's Crafts, and today I'm going to show you how I made this moon and star shaker. And what I used was less resin, epoxy resin. You have a part A and a part B, and you want to put them in equal amounts as far as volume goes. And then you stir it up for 4 minutes. And I'm going to add white mica powder to this. I got this from HTV Ront from Amazon. And I'm just going to use, I think, 2 scoops of it in my resin. And I'm just going to stir that up until all the mica powder is mixed into the resin and you don't see any spots of powder. And then I'm just going to pour it in my little shaker molds. And I got these molds off of Amazon, and there were 10 in a package. The little butterfly mold I bought separately, and it comes 2 in a package. So I just filled up my mold, the star one, and now I'm going to fill up the moon, the stars, and the moon. And then what I did was I wanted to make some white butterflies. So I just did a row of the butterflies with this resin. And you just want to drip 2 to 3 drips in each butterfly. And they turn out so cute. They're so cute. And now this is either later in the same day or the next day. And I'm just going to take my shakers out of my molds. There's the star. Looking pretty. And there's the moon and the stars. Lovely. Oh, and here's my little butterflies, my little row of white butterflies. They're so cute. They're so tiny, and I had the dropsies with all the butterflies. You'll have to see. So there was my first drop. There's my second drop, and then I turn those over. That's the third drop. Fourth drop. Fifth drop. So I dropped them 5 times. I had dropsies. Now what I want to do is start filling up my shakers. So this circle thing that you see there with all the gold metal pieces in, I got that from Hobby Lobby when it was 50% off, I think in a jewelry shop. And it has little sections of moons and stars. So some of them are solid, some of them are cutouts, and I'm just picking out some of the stars. Or actually, I do 2 of each star and then 2 of each moon. And there was a lot more moons than there were stars in this collection. When I first bought it, I thought it was different shapes, but it's just moon and stars. So I thought it was perfect to put the moons in a moon and the stars in a star. That's a no-brainer, right? So I'm just taking my little tweezers there, and I think these are from one of those diamond dot kits. But the tweezers work really well to get these little pieces out of the container and then into my shaker. My fingers were too big. And like I said, each section was a little bit different. You had the cutouts, you had the solid ones, you have little ones, you got bigger ones. It was just a selection of stars and moons. And like I said, there were more moons than there were stars, which was a little disappointing, but it is what it is. So you just turn your dial and there's an open spot, and once you put it over the section you want, it'll open that up, and then you can get the pieces you want out of it. And some of them were stuck together, so I had to kind of pull them apart. But they are teeny tiny. Teeny tiny stars and moons. Okay, so I got all the moons in there, and I think there's another section for stars. Then put some of those in there. Got too many. Took one back. And now what I'm going to use are these little iridescent balls. So I also got them at Hobby Lobby when they were 50% off, and I think again in the jewelry shop section. And these little balls are, I think, 3 to 4 different sizes. They go from real teeny tiny to a little bit bigger. And I put a couple spoonfuls in each of my shakers there. Of course, I had some spillage, so I had to pick those up. And the next thing I'm going to use is a little bit of white glitter. Now, this glitter came in a selection of glitters, and I did get them also from Hobby Lobby. The next thing I want to do is to prepare my acetate. Now, this acetate did come in with the molds for the shakers, and it does have a layer of film over it. I did go ahead and cut it out in the star and the moon shape. So all you do is just lay it on top of your shaker there, and you trace around it, but not all the way to the edges, and then you cut it out. So that's all I did. And then I'm just trying to see where it lays more accurately. Like I said, you don't want it all the way to the end, so you want it about halfway. If you put it all the way to the end, your resin won't catch it on the side there, and then it'll end up coming off. And I did the same thing to the moon. So I'm just going to find the film there, get it started, and then take it off. And you want to mark your Sharpie on the film, and that way when you pull it off, you don't have anything to clean off, because it comes off when you peel the film off. So again, I'm just trying to figure out which is the best way to put it on there, because I do want it to lay down the correct way. And then I do take my alcohol, which this alcohol is 91%, but you can use whatever alcohol you have. And I'm just cleaning the top and the front and the back of the acetate. There's my alcohol in a spray bottle. Makes it easier, so you can get a big bottle and just refill your spray bottle. Once I get it cleaned off, then I try it back on my moon and then my star and try to figure out which way it needs to lay. so that I have it in the right position when I go to resin it on. Because I do want to get this on there correctly. That way, you know, it's not going to leak once I put the oil in it. And it does seal all up with the UV resin. So you do want to make sure you get it where you need it to be. Once I figure that out, I just lay it on my mold the way I want it, the way I'm going to use it, and then I'll get out my UV resin. And this UV resin I get in a 4-pack from Amazon. I haven't had any issues with it. I really like it, so yeah. And I just go around the edges with my UV resin, and you don't want to get it in the hole where you're going to put your oil. You want to leave that part open. So I usually start at one side of the opening and then end at the other side of the opening, so I'm not going over the opening. And I'm just going to take my little tweezers there, get a hold of my acetate, and then lay it on my moon and just kind of move it around to where I need it to be, because like I said, it needs to be not to the edge of your shaker, but in the middle. So you don't want part of it hanging in the center where you're going to put your items, or you don't want it hanging over the edge either. So you need to make sure it's on there right before you UV it down. Because once you UV it, it's on there. Well, I mean, you can get it off, but just make sure you have it on there correctly. And now I'm just taking the acetate for the star, and I'm putting it on, just using my tweezers to place it right, so it's not hanging off the edge and it's not going in the center. Once I get it on there right, I'm going to put it under my UV light for 2 minutes. And this UV light is Let's Resin, and I did get it off of Amazon. Now, another thing you need to do is when you put it under the UV light, when you first put it under, you need to kind of hold on to your acetate so it doesn't pop up. So I usually use like my tweezers or whatever and just set them on top of my acetate. And I'm just using baby oil in this little bottle. It's called Needle Tip Bottle. And I did get mine from, excuse me, Hobby Lobby. There were two in a package. One was smaller, one was larger. This is the smaller one. And I just put my baby oil in there using a little tiny funnel. And it's just some old baby oil that I've had forever. And I just fill it up, and you do want to make sure you leave an air pocket in there. If you make your air pocket too small, then your items won't move around as much. And now what I'm doing is I'm taking my UV resin again, and I'm going around the edges of my moon there. And I do want to make sure that I close up that hole where I inserted the needle tip bottle with my baby oil. And then I'm just going over the top of the acetate with my UV resin. And I'm just taking a toothpick just to kind of level it out and make sure all spots are covered and that it goes all the way to the edges. You don't want it to drip down, and it is pretty liquidy, so you got to kind of watch that. But it's not that hard to do. And now I'm going to put it back under my UV light for another 2 minutes. So I'm just checking it out, make sure I don't have any leaks. And then I'm just going to clean it up because it does have some baby oil on it. And I'm just spritzing it with my alcohol and then wiping it with my paper towel. And there it is. There's my shaker with my moons in there. Moons in moon. Then I'm just going to turn it over, and I'm going to use a magnet on the back. I'm going to glue it on with some E6000 glue. And I get these little thin magnets. Now these are really thin. I use them for my paper crafting, but I did get them off of Amazon. I do like them. Like I said, they are really thin. And now I'm just going to do the same thing with my star. I'm just going to insert my needle tip bottle into that opening on my star and fill it up with my baby oil. And like I said, I do leave a pretty big bubble in there. I mean, it's not huge, but it's not small either. Because like I said, if your bubble's too small, your items aren't going to move around freely. They're just going to barely move. And again, I'm going to take my UV resin and go all the way around my star, making sure I'm closing up that little hole where I was able to put my needle tip bottle in there for the baby oil. And then I'm just going to put resin on the top of my acetate. Once I get that on there, then I'm going to take my toothpick again, and I'm just going to even it all out, taking the resin all the way to the edges. I don't want it dripping over the edge, but I do want to take it all the way to the edge. Now there is a denser UV resin that you can get. I just use the resin that I have. I don't buy different ones. So, you know, it is pretty thin. And then I'm just going to put it under my UV light for 2 minutes. And then I'll just check it to make sure I don't have any leakage. So it looks pretty good. Nothing's leaking out. I did have a drip down the side here, and I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife and kind of peel that up and off. I mean, you could leave it there. It's not that big of a deal. I'm sure people aren't going to study it and say, oh, she left a drip there. Yeah, they're not going to do that. But I did peel it off with my X-Acto knife. And I think that was the only drip I had. So there it is. There's my star in stars. My stars in the star. So cute. And now I'm just going to add a magnet to the back of this one. Just put a drop of my E6000 onto the back. And then add my little thin magnet to it. And I don't have any problems with these tiny magnets holding up my items and putting them on my fridge. No problem at all. They all stay where I put them. So there's my star and my moon. If I could get them down so you could see. There we go. Let me know what you think of this project. Is this something that you're going to do? So here they are. I think they turned out great. Let me know what you think in the comments. Again, I'm Liz with Liz's Crafts, and if you like what you see, give me a thumbs up. I do a video or a short each day, and if you haven't subscribed, please think about doing so, and I'll see you later.